Hi, my name is Elizabeth Peacock. I am currently a student at Liberty University in my Capstone program, and I had to interview a professional who works in the area of mental health. And so I was able to interview two professionals, and I'm going to tell you about them now. If I look over to the side, this is where my notes are. So, a little background: I work in law enforcement. I'm a dispatcher, and that's where I want to go once I do get my degree. Is I want to work with law enforcement, and so I was able to interview a LPC, a licensed professional counselor, through the Harris County Sheriff's Office. So his name is Jeffrey Manser. He is, like I said, a licensed professional counselor. He has his master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. He was also a officer for 15 years working for the Beaumont Police Department. He graduated in 2017 and became licensed in 2018. He did say that he had a private practice part-time for several years where he worked with primarily law enforcement officers, their families, and veterans as well. And then when the job became open at the Harris County Sheriff's Office, that is when he chose to go over there and work with them. So now he's in the Harris County Sheriff's Office. I asked him to describe his job duties. He works with the stress management and wellness services, mental health services for the county. He primarily does work with officers or deputies for the Harris County Sheriff's Office. He can work with their, immediate family members if they need that. If there's something going on in that deputy's personal life, he can work with the family as well. This service is just available through the Sheriff's Office for Sheriff's Office employees. It does not cover the Constable's Office at this time. And it most likely won't change, but they hire a large agency and they definitely need that help. We asked him to describe what he finds fulfilling about working in the industry. Because he was a police officer for so long, he understands what it's like to kind of, feel, I guess, a little lost. And he obviously has dealt with some very intense situations being in law enforcement, and so he finds it very fulfilling that he gets to work with his people, basically. So he gets to work with the people who are out there every day fighting crime and going to all the disturbances and doing things like that. So he finds that very fulfilling in his job. And he likes to especially help them work through work stressors, things in work that makes it very stressful, and help them in their personal lives as well. Next, I asked him to describe what he finds challenging working within this industry, and he said the culture. For those who don't know, the culture of law enforcement, unfortunately, can be kind of toxic sometimes. Toxic may not be the right word to use, but it's a hard industry to thrive in because you're kind of left to your own devices. In other words, mental health, obviously for everybody, has a stigma around it, but for law enforcement officers, I feel like there's a bigger stigma because they kind of think that they can handle anything and that they don't need help until it gets to the point to where they have no choice but to get help. And even when they realize that they need help, they still will be hesitant to, reach out and get that help, again, because of the stigma surrounding mental health. He does reach out to deputies when they go through, stressful situations, for instance, a shooting or, sexual assaults or the traumatizing events like that can be really difficult for them to handle. He will reach out to them. Of course, they don't have to respond, they don't have to come back, but sometimes they do, and he does enjoy, being able to help them when they want to do that. And sometimes all it is just reaching out and saying, hey, we're here for you. If you need anything, please reach out to us, or giving them resources that they can do on their own time. The next question is, what do you do to continue professional growth? We are in the state of Texas, so there are requirements by the state of Texas that, a licensed professional counselor has to keep on top of. There's yearly trainings and things like that. He says he really pays attention to trends, like the trends for mental health and the trends for treating mental health as well. He likes to get new things in there if he can that may work out better than what they have used previously. He specializes in PTSD, obviously, with law enforcement, so he keeps up to date on PTSD research and treatments and things of that nature. And then also, he really likes to keep up with law enforcement culture. Again, the attitudes that seem to be going around the sheriff's office, the morale, stuff like that, so that way he can really understand what those deputies are going through at that point in time. And then the next question was, what recommendations for a student pursuing work in this field? And he said, for me specifically, I do want to work in law enforcement. So in a law enforcement aspect, he said it's very important for me to understand the culture, which, being a dispatcher for about 4.5 years now, I definitely understand the culture. Of course, I don't understand everything. I'm inside. I'm not out in the field like these deputies are, but I understand kind of their thought processes, the things that they say and they do, and some of it may sound kind of crass, but I understand, what they're going through. Not that I go through the same thing, but I get what they're saying. So you have to definitely be culturally competent, not just culturally competent in a law enforcement aspect, but culturally competent to our area. We are in the Houston area. We have a very diverse group of people that live here. So you are not going to just get, an average white male or a average black female. You're going to have everybody from every race, every culture who are working within law enforcement. So you have to be on top of not just the culture that you have in the Houston area, but also the culture that these people come from. And then of course a lot of police officers do not want to go see a counselor in any way, shape, or form. So you can't force anybody to do that. Of course the option is always available to them, but you can't make them do it. So you have to be really perceptive of their needs and what they can and can't give you, I guess, when you reach out to them. They definitely identify with those who are in law enforcement. So for instance, he has a lot of success with deputies because he was an officer for 15 years, so he understands them and they feel understood by him. I did ask him if the deputies would be comfortable speaking to me coming from a dispatch standpoint, and he said that most likely they would. There definitely would be some hesitation for some of them for sure, but because I do have that background in law enforcement now, he does believe they would be willing to talk to me if they needed to. And then just a little bit more information, they do also, because the jail for Harris County is part of the county, so they do reach out to the detentions officers as well and provide services to them if they need to. They'll have like mental health events and things like that where they can actually go and speak to the detentions officers and the deputies and provide them any kind of support that they may need. They do not offer anything to the prisoners at this time. The second professional that I spoke to is a licensed professional counselor. Again, she owns her own primary practice in a suburb of Houston. Her name is Lisa Woodridge. She is a licensed professional counselor. Her practice is called Magnolia Soul Care. She has a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. She did also go to Liberty University for her bachelor's and her master's, and she is currently in a seminary working on her doctorate. She wants to get a bigger, stronger background on the biblical faith side of counseling. So I asked her to describe her job duties. Obviously, she runs a private practice, so she does all of the fine details. She runs the practice, so she does provide counseling in person and online. And then also, of course, she does the finances and the taxes. She does office supplies, all that kind of stuff. She has a EMDR descalation movement processing with bilateral stimulation for severe trauma for those with PTSD. I did ask her briefly to kind of explain what that was, and I did not understand it, so I'm looking into that more. And I do know that the eyes have, quite a bit to do with mental health. Like, they can really affect it. So that was interesting to learn about. And then the next question I asked her is describe what you find fulfilling about working in the industry. Her biggest thing is seeing the change in an individual and a client, or in their marriage and, individually, because she does marriage counseling, PTSD, stress, trauma, all of those. So when, they come in and they're in crisis, she loves to see the change in them, and that really makes her feel fulfilled and like she's in the right space, in the right career field. The next question was describe what you find challenging about working in the industry. She made a big point on life coaches. According to Ms. Woolridge, apparently, to be a life coach, you can just take a couple of classes online and be licensed. And you can go making videos and hosting conferences and personal life coaching sessions. And it tends to turn into a form of counseling as well, but because they are not professional counselors, they don't have that background, they did not go to school for that, they are giving advice that really should not be advice, and it's making people's mental health worse. And so she will have clients who have come from seeing a life coach to her, and they have severe trauma, not just from the situation that they were dealing with previously, but also from the life coach themselves. So she finds it very dangerous, and she, is trying to find a way to, help those understand that life coach and counseling are two different things. And you don't want to take your trauma to a life coach, because they're not really going to be able to help you like a licensed counselor would be able to. So again, life coaches are not fully educated to be therapists. They're unregulated. You can get your degree online, and there's no regulation after that. You don't have to get, more training or keep up a license or anything like that. So the trauma involved from that is really what she finds very challenging in her industry. The next question was, what do you do to continue your professional growth? Again, she is in Texas, so there are requirements yearly from the Texas licensing committee that she has to keep up with. She said that she does a trauma annual review, a CPT training yearly. She goes to seminars online and in person to keep up with her hours. She specializes in trauma, so a lot of the things that she does for training is trauma related. She does advocating for children and cultural awareness. She is always doing some kind of class. She is part of an organization that does classes every couple of months to every week. So she said on an average week she is in some kind of training or class or something of that nature to keep aware of what is going on. Cultural health awareness and language and cultural health awareness, and she takes classes specifically for those who are within a Hispanic community. We do have a lot of Hispanic communities in our area, so she really tries to specialize her training in what cultures we have around us. The next thing I asked her was recommendations for a student pursuing work in this field. Obviously, you have to get licensed. She said to make sure that you're aware of how long it will take and how many hours you have to take. In the state of Texas, you have to have 3,000 practical hours in order to become licensed, and you cannot become licensed before 18 months. So it is a minimum of 18 months in order for you to be licensed. She said that her 3,000 hours took her about 19 months, and this is supervised 50 to 60 minute counseling sessions. All of this depends, of course, on the person who's going to be your supervisor and sign off on your training. Sometimes this is unpaid, sometimes this is paid far less than what a licensed professional counselor would get paid. It is a 1-for-1 ratio, so if you do a 50-minute counseling session, you will get 50 minutes towards your 3,000 hours. And she said most of it depends on the supervisors. Again, sometimes the supervisor will allow you to see your own clients. Other times they will have you see their clients. And for instance, if you're seeing their clients, they may, you may not get paid for that, and they will get paid for you seeing that client. So a lot of it just depends on the supervisor that you get and who you go through to get your hours through. She said managing your expectations on how much you're going to make, the internship process, supervisor costs. She did mention sometimes that you will have to pay your supervisor part of what you made off of a counseling session. So you really don't make a lot of money starting out. So if you're in this field for money, this is not the field for you to be in, basically. And then she mentioned LPCAs can start private practices under Texas law, but those can be kind of hard to start because it is a licensed professional counselor assistant, I believe she said is what it stood for. So some people don't want to see an LPCA, or they may not want to see you knowing that you're in training and you're not licensed yet. So it can also be hard to find clientele as well. She said when you've been in the field for a while, don't reflect on your lack of clients or your ability. It has nothing to do with your ability. It's just reaching people. So you can go through the APA to have your practice, your services advertised, and that may not provide you with any clients. She said her biggest area where she gets her clients is from Google, which is actually where I found her. I Googled counselors in my area, and she was one of the first ones to pop up. She said it's free service. You don't have to pay for it, where you would have to pay it for it through the APA. So, let me see. Getting people to review is a big part. If you can get them to come in and get them to give you a review, you look well, and that will make people want to come see you more. Making sure that you're registered with the state of Texas for your accounts and your marketing. She said join a chamber in your community, and that gets you out there as well. It's kind of a friend of a friend situation. You may meet somebody who can help you, fix the hole in your roof, and then they're calling you the next week and they're saying, hey, my friend needs a counselor, are you available? So that's a really good networking opportunity in order to get your practice out there and to get clients. And then I also asked her, because I've looked online, what are the requirements in Texas to become licensed, and I found it very hard to find information because a lot of, the main gov.gov website wants you to register to become licensed before it tell you what the requirements are. But I did find out that you have to have a master's degree. I knew that most places, private practice-wise, would not take you without a master's degree, but I thought I could still get licensed. So, come to find out, I cannot be licensed without that master's degree. So I will be graduating next year with my bachelor's degree, and then in the fall, I will be going somewhere, I'm not sure yet, somewhere here in Texas to get my master's degree. She did say that she personally would not hire anybody that did not have their master's degree, even if it was allowed, even if they were licensed at a bachelor's degree level, because she said that you really need that wisdom, those more advanced classes, the more time learning in order to be able to efficiently help people. Because you're talking about the most, sacred, insecure part of a person when you're counseling. So you really need to have that wisdom to be able to, not just keep that private, but actually be able to help them in the long run. She also said that if you were able to get licensed for whatever reason in the state of Texas, you're only looking at about $26 an hour at a bachelor's degree level. Of course, most people are not in this industry to make money, but you do, want to know how much you're going to make. So about $26 an hour at a bachelor's degree level. So master's obviously would be more than that. She's also worked for a nonprofit before she created her own business, and has worked in doing psychological evaluations in hospitals, but was never an intern there. She did her internship with a private practice. Overall, I learned a lot through both of these, Mr. Benzer and Miss Woolridge. I'm very glad that I was able to get to speak with them and really get insight on that, and I'm glad that I was able to get insight on a law enforcement standpoint and a private practice standpoint. It really helped me kind of narrow down where I really want to work once I get licensed, and it was a very helpful experience, and I'm very glad that I was able to do it. Thank you.